Hey everyone, so you know how Nintendo hasn't yet really hit the jackpot when it comes to their mobile games, be it Fire Emblem Heroes or Super Mario Run, Dragalia Lost. Some of these games are doing well, Fire Emblem Heroes and Dragalia Lost in particular are performing well, but they're not really, hitting the ground running like a lot of mobile games were, and like a lot of investors thought Nintendo would see happen when they decided to bring some games to the mobile space. After all, I don't think Nintendo's really released a bad mobile game, at least the ones that they talk about. Maybe some of the ones by the Pokemon Company you might not like as much, but Nintendo seems to be releasing quality mobile games, which is a little shocking on a platform for some people where they're used to just a bunch of junk or puzzle games. That being said, Nintendo apparently has a reason that they're not making as much money from mobile games, and it is completely by choice. Now, this comes from one of the people that's been working on Nintendo mobile games. They kind of spoke to some people at Wall Street Journal. I can't show you the Wall Street Journal article as it is a subscription-only piece, and out of respect for the Wall Street Journal, I am not going to just show you their article when you're supposed to pay to see it. So instead, I will just use some quotes available on Reset Era, since that is publicly available. So let's just get into these quotes, and you're going to learn something very interesting about how Nintendo is approaching the mobile game space. So it says, since 2015, Nintendo has had revenue sharing agreements for smartphone games that it creates with partners like the DeNA company. In some cases, players can spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars trying to win special items. Fearing such behavior will damage Nintendo's brand image, the company has asked its partners to adjust the games so that users won't spend too much, according to people familiar with Nintendo's strategy. CyberAgent officials say Nintendo asked the game maker to adjust the game to avoid excessive spending by users. Nintendo is not interested in making a large amount of revenue from a single smartphone game, one CyberAgent official said. If we managed the game alone, we would have made a lot more. Now, for those wondering, CyberAgent is heavily involved in Dragalia Lost. It was developed by Nintendo EPD and Cygames, and you might not see CyberAgent listed here, but if you actually click on Cygames, you will find out that it's a Romanized name, blah 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 industry. Scroll on down. The owner of Cygames is CyberAgent, who owns 69% of it. DeNA owns 24%, and Nintendo owns 5%. So CyberAgent essentially is the majority owner of Cygames that made Dragalia Lost. So this is in direct reference to Dragalia Lost that CyberAgent is saying they would have made a ton more money on this game if Nintendo had allowed them to, or if they had just managed the game on their own. Now, one could argue that this means that CyberAgent maybe regrets letting Nintendo buy into the company and all that stuff. I don't think that's the case. I think this is just a case where Wall Street Journal was doing some investigative journalism, trying to figure out why are Nintendo games on mobile devices not making the kind of money that maybe Wall Street Journal expected, or other investors expected, or maybe Nintendo fans thought that Nintendo would. And it's Nintendo doesn't want to participate in some of the ugly practices that happen in the mobile space, where you are just seeking those white whales, and they could just really make your game soar in terms of revenue. Nintendo isn't interested in having any individual game be the new Pokemon Go, right? Like Pokemon Go blew up. Nintendo isn't interested in having a Pokemon Go revenue stream. What they seem to be interested in is having a wide variety of mobile games that collectively bring in a lot of money. Now, we do know that Nintendo is making like 300 to 400 million, it seems, annually from mobile games already, which is pretty good. Now, that includes Pokemon Go revenue for them. The small percentage of that they get, plus Dragalia Lost and Super Mario Run and all that stuff. So while Nintendo appears to maybe not be going with the Super Mario Run method anymore, because while it has a huge install base, there's such a small amount of people that actually bought the full game. I think they're going to go more towards the Animal Crossing Pocket Leaf route, more towards the gacha mechanics maybe in Fire Emblem, if they can find another game that works better in that way, or the Dragalia Lost way, where Dragalia Lost revenue has actually been massively increasing, and I think is on pace to, if it hasn't already, get past Fire Emblem Heroes revenue. And Dragalia Lost, by the way, is a really good game. I don't know if you guys have played it yet on phones, but when people tell me like there's no good games on mobile devices, like go play any of Nintendo's games on mobile devices. All of them are really, really good. Sure, Animal Crossing Pocket Camp's not as good as like Animal Crossing New Leaf, but it's way the hell better than Amiibo Festival, way the hell better than Happy Home Designer. Let me tell you, it's a pretty solid game. Super Mario Run is a really, really good game. Like, Dragalia Lost is probably the best game that Nintendo has out on mobile devices right now. It is amazing, and yeah, if you spend a few bucks on the game, I couldn't blame you. The game is good, and it kind of earns your money, right? Like, sometimes these free-to-play games could just be so good that you don't feel bad spending money on it. There's like some people who don't mind, buying a season pass once in a while for things like Fortnite because they have so much fun and the game is so good to them, it's worth putting a little bit of money in, right? So I honestly think that Nintendo's done a very different approach to mobile devices, which has led to them making not as much money as they could, but they still seem to be seeing big install bases on their games. The Nintendo brand name is really helping get install bases on these games. And while the games are not catering themselves, to really be, money suckers, they are creating a reputation. And maybe Nintendo's goal, obviously besides protecting their brand, is to change how things happen in the mobile space to prove you don't need to just go the one direction with mobile games to be massively profitable on the mobile platform. And they're already seeing good profit margins from mobile games. So Nintendo's strategy is probably, look, if we get 3 of these out per year, and these are perpetual games that just keep getting installed and keep getting used over and over and over again for years and years and years and years, eventually you'll have a library of 20 or 30 of these bad boys that are just constantly bringing you in revenue, which could easily end up making up for something like not having like a dedicated 3DS revenue stream anymore, right? Like you could just have this consistent revenue stream coming in from mobile where it's a bunch of titles constantly bringing you in little bits of money. And I think that that is an interesting business strategy that only a company dedicated to attempting to do it could pull off, because any of the smaller companies or the indie studios that are built around the big revenue on mobile games, they probably don't have the money in the bank, the monetary investment to get enough high quality games out to get little bits of money from all those games to add up to a lot. They instead are probably focused on the 1 or 2 mega hits they can pull off and trying to suck consumers in those games dry. Tap Sports Baseball or the Tap Sports or Glue or whatever as an example focused really heavily on like Tap Sports Baseball and like one other title they have where they make a majority of their money. So I honestly think that this is a very nice approach and a different approach than other companies have taken, like EA and Activision, Sony, etc., when they bring games to mobile platforms. And I think it's a strategy that is maybe built to last. I think some people have been waiting for the inevitable crash of the mobile market with how it's monetizing things. And I don't know that it's ever really going to crash. But I do think if more companies start doing what Nintendo's doing, making these high-quality products on phones that don't suck you dry, like if Nintendo can make an addictive Candy Crush-style game on phones that doesn't suck your money dry and is just as fun, if not more fun, that's going to start really making like massive shifts in the marketplace where Nintendo will be like, look, get out a bunch of high-quality games rather than getting out like 1 or 2 and sucking people dry. So I honestly think that this is a brilliant move from Nintendo. It also it kind of debunks one of the fears I've had about Nintendo. If you guys remember, about a year back now, I talked about my fear of Nintendo becoming a little bit like EA with some of their loot boxes and DLC practices. But this to me sounds like obviously my fears were misguided and not relevant, because Nintendo as a company very much wants to protect their brand and not make their brand be associated with some of the stuff that's happening out there. As an example, there's been all this controversy around loot boxes. Well, loot boxes exist in some of Nintendo's mobile games, and you don't see Nintendo catching any flack for it, right? Like, Fire Emblem Heroes is literally built around loot boxes, gacha mechanics, and they're not getting any flack for it at all. Nintendo has found a way to protect their brand while sparingly using these practices where it makes sense for them to use it, where consumers aren't going to have an issue with it, right? Like having a game that's built around the idea of loot boxes is a lot different than taking a game that's not built around loot boxes but forcing loot boxes into it as a core mechanic when it doesn't really make sense except for just draining people's wallets. So I think that Nintendo is... I'm not going to say that they care about the consumers because they're making this as a brand move, but what I will say is that Nintendo obviously just has a different approach to the video game industry. I think we all know that at this point, and I don't think we're going to need to worry about them diving completely down the rabbit hole of sucking our wallets dry anytime soon. I think Nintendo is a company that, despite what investors want Nintendo to do, Nintendo is just happy making lots of money rather than making all of the money, right? Like Nintendo loves being highly profitable, and they're a for-profit business, and they want to make lots and lots of money, but they want to do it in a way that they feel is more sustainable long haul than necessarily trying to catch lightning in a bottle like they did with Wii. I think they really they saw the Wii stuff, they saw DS, and the way that Nintendo views things is that was great. But look what happened after. We don't want this after effect to happen with mobile games. We don't want to have a mega hit and then nothing gets to that again and everything just goes downhill from there like with Pokemon Go. They don't want to have, a mega hit console again and then watch, a couple generations go by where they suddenly can't get back to those levels again. I think Nintendo is trying a new long-term strategy where it's like, look, we're looking at the long-haul growth of the company and we're not here to just increase your money on your shares today. We're here to make Nintendo as a company more valuable long haul. So it's still a business strategy. It's just a different type of business strategy than most of the industry is doing. And if I have to be honest, it seems more sustainable. If you think about it, a company like King that was bought out by Activision, right? Like pretty much all their employees were let go, and things are kind of slowing down for them because they made Candy Crush and they have never had anything as big as Candy Crush again. They've had other successful games, but because it doesn't make as much money as Candy Crush, it ends up being a disappointment versus just relying on having a slew of high quality games that all make little trickles of revenue that end up equaling out to the mega revenue you might get from one game, but that revenue doesn't go anywhere because you're always releasing more of those quality games. So even as, say, a Super Mario Run drops off, or say people eventually stop spending money in Fire Emblem Heroes, even though they keep adding content, say that revenue slows down, it doesn't matter because there was another mobile game that came out that replaced that revenue. So I think it's a brilliant strategy what Nintendo is doing. It's obviously very good for consumers on mobile devices and obviously on Switch that we might not have to worry about these kind of practices since Nintendo doesn't want to be associated with all these issues going on in the video game industry. And honestly, I mean, kudos to you, Nintendo, for even like if you only own 5% of this company and you still told them, no, this isn't happening in this game that we are going to publish. Like, you're not doing it. You need to tone down how you're doing this stuff. It does not fit with our business partner strategy, and I think that's brilliant. I think Nintendo is doing things differently, but they almost feel like they're smart, like they're ahead of the game on this one, that they realize what everyone is doing is not the only way to do it, and it might not even be the best way to do it. And I think some other companies are starting to catch on. I think Square Enix is starting to catch on a little bit, and some other companies out there are starting to realize, you know what, maybe we don't have to have like that mega hit, like EA closing down studios because, Dead Space didn't sell, 8 million copies or whatever, only sold like 5 or 6 million. It's like, maybe you don't need to make all of the money with one game, right? Maybe it's okay to just be profitable and then just have release more and more and more games that keep being profitable. And you know what ends up happening? The value of your company just keeps rising. So good kudos on you, Nintendo, for doing something different. And it seems to be working so far. Investors are never going to be happy with this strategy. But you know what? The stability in your stock long haul, I think, is something that investors can appreciate, especially those that aren't investing in your company to turn big profits, but more so to kind of use it as a retirement account, right? Put in $50,000, $100,000, $300,000 in Nintendo stock, and or you can almost feel confident in 10, 20 years from now that you're going to get all of that money back, if not more. Long haul, especially if you invest in their stock at the right time. So I think Nintendo is they're just different. And despite the stockholders not being happy with these strategies, a lot of the biggest stockholders aren't going to force Nintendo to do anything different because Nintendo does what Nintendo wants to do. And this is awesome. And it's awesome to hear that this happened during a transition period when Furukawa took over, because Furukawa is a businessman, a money man, and to hear that this is still how Nintendo approaches things under Furukawa is also great news in general, because I know there was some concern with Furukawa in charge that maybe Nintendo starts turning a bit more greedy than staying the way that Nintendo has found their success so far. So I'm happy with this, and I'm actually very curious. Of course, this is all my opinion on this news. I really want to hear what you guys think, so let me know. If you completely disagree with all this, that's fine. Go down in the comments. Let me know why. I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in. I am Nathaniel Rufflejans from Nintendo Prime, and as always, I love each and every one of you for checking out this video. Why don't you subscribe if you would like to see more content? And hey, can we get this video to like 200 likes? I think that would be really cool. Let's like get to 200 likes on this video, because the more likes we get on videos, the more people that see the video. So if you really enjoyed this video, drop a like. It takes one click that I just appreciate. It just helps out the channel so much. And you know what? I'll catch you in the next video.